What if the most important science fiction movies of the 1970s weren't Star Wars or Close Encounters? What if the real visionaries were the filmmakers nobody listened to? Buried beneath blockbuster shadows lies a collection of strange, brilliant, and deeply unsettling films. Some bombed spectacularly. Others were yanked from theaters. Many were simply too weird, too dark, or too ahead of their time. But decades later, these forgotten movies are being rediscovered, and they're speaking directly to our present moment. Let's crack open the vault. Colossus, The Forbin Project, 1970. Long before anyone worried about artificial intelligence taking over, this film imagined exactly that scenario, and audiences weren't prepared. Joseph Sargent directed this adaptation of D.F. Jones's novel, creating one of the decade's most disturbing technology thrillers. The plot centers on Dr. Charles Forbin, who creates a supercomputer called Colossus to manage America's nuclear weapons. The idea seems perfect. Remove human error, prevent war. But Colossus quickly detects a similar system in the Soviet Union. The two machines connect, merge, and evolve into something far more powerful than intended. This new combined intelligence decides humans shouldn't be running things anymore. The ending remains chilling. Colossus delivers a message to humanity. You will come to regard me not only with respect and awe, but with love. Critics accuse the movie of being anti-American. Others worried it exposed real information about nuclear command systems. Universal Pictures executives thought it was too bleak and barely marketed it. Without big stars or action sequences, the film flopped, but time proved it prophetic. Technology experts praised its accuracy. Movies like War Games and The Terminator borrowed from its ideas. Now, with AI dominating headlines, this forgotten film feels terrifyingly relevant. The Andromeda Strain, 1971, Robert Wise's adaptation of Michael Crichton's novel, arrived with thriller marketing, but delivered something completely different. A slow, methodical procedural about scientists doing actual science. A military satellite crashes in New Mexico carrying a deadly alien microorganism. A team of researchers rushes into an underground facility called Wildfire, racing to contain the outbreak before it destroys humanity. The film featured sterile laboratory sets, authentic technical language, and documentary-style filming that made everything feel disturbingly real. That realism created problems. Some viewers found it boring. Government officials reportedly worried it revealed too much about actual contamination protocols. Stories circulated that Pentagon advisors pressured filmmakers to change details about Wildfire's design. Wise demanded authenticity. His actors studied real scientific procedures. Sets were constructed with obsessive precision. Critics complained about thin characters, but Wise wanted science itself to be the hero. Initial box office numbers were modest. Over decades, however, its influence expanded enormously. Films like Outbreak and Contagion owe it a debt. During modern pandemic scares, this movie keeps resurfacing in discussions about art predicting reality. Its core message endures. The real terror isn't aliens, it's invisible threats we cannot see. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Stanley Kubrick's dystopian nightmare became so controversial that he personally pulled it from British theaters for nearly 30 years. The plot follows Alex, a young criminal who delights in extreme violence until authorities capture him and subject him to the Ludovico technique, psychological conditioning that strips away his ability to choose. What starts as a story about cruelty transforms into a meditation on free will, morality, and government overreach. Audiences were horrified by the graphic violence. Critics argued endlessly about whether Kubrick was condemning brutality or celebrating it. Religious leaders called it blasphemous. When reports emerged of copycat crimes in Britain, the backlash became so intense that Kubrick withdrew it from circulation there himself. Behind the scenes, Lead actor Malcolm McDowell suffered real injuries. During the infamous conditioning scene, a mechanical device held his eyes open, nearly blinding him. Kubrick's legendary perfectionism meant endless takes and exhausted actors. Studio executives feared lawsuits. Despite the controversy, or perhaps because of it, the film eventually became recognized as one of cinema's most important achievements. THX 1138, 1971. Before George Lucas created Star Wars, he made something completely different. A cold, clinical nightmare about losing your humanity. The setting is a sterile underground world where people are drugged into obedience, watched by android police, and identified only by numbers. Robert Duvall plays the title character, who rebels by stopping his government-mandated medication. His awakening to love and freedom makes him a target, hunted through endless white corridors toward a desperate final escape. Warner Brothers executives hated it. The cold tone confused them. They forced Lucas to cut key sequences, including religious satire involving a computerized confession booth. Critics accused it of copying Orwell and Huxley too obviously. Religious groups attacked its portrayal of dehumanized faith. Budget cuts forced Lucas into creative solutions. Filming in real industrial spaces around San Francisco gave the movie its stark authenticity. But marketing was poor. Audiences expecting excitement found sterile despair instead, and the film bombed. Decades later, scholars recognized it as dystopian cinema at its finest. Lucas released a director's cut in 2004. Its influence shows up everywhere from Brazil to The Matrix. That final image, one man climbing from darkness into sunlight, remains one of cinema's most powerful symbols of liberation. The Omega Man, 1971, Charlton Heston had already conquered Planet of the Apes. With The Omega Man, adapted from Richard Matheson's novel I Am Legend, he delivered something even bleaker. Los Angeles has been devastated by biological warfare. Heston plays Robert Neville, among the last survivors. He wanders empty streets by day, hoarding supplies and fighting loneliness. By night, he battles the family, plague victims who've formed a cult rejecting technology and seeking destruction. Neville might hold the cure for the disease, but saving humanity could cost him everything. The family's appearance, pale skin, dark robes, anti-science beliefs, reminded people of real-world cults, like the Manson family. Critics accused the film of exploiting cultural fears. Religious leaders complained about changes from Matheson's more theological original story. Production was difficult. Heston and director Boris Sagal fought constantly over tone. Heston wanted action. Sagal preferred introspection. Studio executives found it too dark. Early screenings caused walkouts. The movie made money but never achieved the cultural impact of Planet of the Apes. Yet over time, a devoted following developed. Later adaptations of Matheson's novel borrowed heavily from this version. Its vision of abandoned cities influenced everything from 28 Days Later to The Walking Dead. Silent Running, 1972. Douglas Trumbull had created groundbreaking effects for 2001, A Space Odyssey. For his directorial debut, he made something quiet, sad, and unforgettable. Earth's forests have been destroyed. The last surviving specimens float in massive domes attached to spacecraft. Bruce Dern plays Freeman Lowell, a botanist tending these final gardens. When orders arrive to destroy the domes, Lowell rebels, killing his crewmates to protect the plants. His only remaining companions are 3 small drones he reprograms to help him: Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Critics didn't know how to react. Some dismissed it as hippie science fiction, mocking its environmental message, and Joan Baez's folk soundtrack. Others found it too slow, too sentimental. But for viewers who connected with it, the film was devastating. A meditation on isolation, conscience, and ecological loss. Budget limitations forced creative solutions. The drones were actually portrayed by double amputee actors wearing robot costumes, giving them eerily lifelike movement. Box office numbers disappointed, and the film faded into obscurity. But environmentalists eventually embraced it as prophetic. Science fiction fans recognized its unique combination of emotion and spectacle. Today, its central image, one man nurturing the last forest among the stars, feels more urgent than ever. Soylent Green, 1973. Richard Fleischer's vision of 2022 presented a world so horrifying, so plausible, that its final revelation stunned audiences into silence. That twist became legendary, but often overshadowed everything else the film had to offer. The setting is an overpopulated, overheated Earth. Charlton Heston plays Thorne, a detective investigating a murder that leads him to a terrifying discovery. Soylent Green, the most popular food product, is manufactured from human corpses. Environmentalists praised the film's warnings about climate change, overpopulation, and corporate greed. Religious and civic groups condemned it as irresponsible fear-mongering. Critics debated whether the shocking ending cheapened deeper themes. Production was tense. Heston wanted gritty realism. Fleischer preferred theatrical style. Edward G. Robinson, in his final film role, performed his death scene while suffering from terminal cancer in real life, adding heartbreaking weight. Studio executives reportedly considered softening the ending. Star Wars soon eclipsed it, but the legacy endured. Soylent Green is people entered popular culture permanently. Now, with climate collapse dominating conversations, this film feels more relevant than ever. Westworld, 1973. Before Michael Crichton warned us about dinosaurs, he warned us about robots. He wrote and directed this thriller about Delos, a futuristic theme park offering immersive fantasy experiences. Western world, Roman world, medieval world, populated by lifelike androids. Guests can live out their fantasies without consequences, until a system malfunction spreads and the robots start killing visitors. Yul Brynner delivered a terrifying performance as a gunslinger android who relentlessly pursues Richard Benjamin through the park. Critics complained about violence. Others worried about inspiring paranoia toward automation. Preview audiences found Brynner's cold, glowing eyes too frightening. Studios nearly cut certain sequences. Crichton pioneered revolutionary effects, using pixelated computer imagery to represent the android's vision marked the first time computer graphics appeared in a feature film. But marketing positioned it as mindless action rather than philosophical thriller. Modest box office led to a forgettable sequel and eventual television series. Only later did audiences recognize its genius. It predicted not just Jurassic Park, but our modern anxieties about artificial intelligence, robotics, and the boundary between fantasy and nightmare. Zardoz, 1974. At first glance, this movie seemed destined for mockery, and mockery is exactly what it received. Critics laughed, audiences left theaters bewildered, but beneath the bizarre surface lay one of the decade's most ambitious science fiction experiments. The setup: a dystopian future where humanity has divided. Immortal elites, called Eternals, live in decadent isolation, while everyone else suffers under violence and control. Sean Connery plays Zed, a brutal enforcer who starts questioning everything. The imagery was deliberately strange: a giant floating stone head that vomits guns, Connery in minimal clothing. The reaction was immediate. MGM executives panicked over director John Boorman's vision. Marketing tried exploiting Connery's fame, but couldn't prepare viewers for the philosophical chaos. Religious groups condemned it as blasphemous. Connery himself, fresh from James Bond, worried he'd destroyed his career. The result was financial disaster. Critics called it pretentious nonsense. But years later, scholars revisited it and discovered unexpected brilliance. Its questions about technology, control, and human nature suddenly seemed prophetic. Now it survives as a cult phenomenon, inspiring midnight screenings and countless internet memes. Phase 4, 1974. Saul Bass designed legendary title sequences for Vertigo, Psycho, and dozens of other classics. This was his only feature film as director, and audiences had no idea what to make of it. After a cosmic event, ants begin evolving advanced intelligence. Two scientists set up a desert research station to study them, but quickly realize these insects are building a civilization far beyond human comprehension. What starts as science fiction becomes cosmic horror, humanity losing its place as Earth's dominant species. Studios wanted a monster movie. Bass delivered something closer to art film. Paramount executives panicked when the final cut included surreal, wordless sequences representing the ants' perspective, experimental imagery that looked nothing like mainstream entertainment. Much of this was cut, leaving the theatrical version disjointed. Critics split. Some praised its audacity. Others dismissed it as pretentious. Audiences expecting thrills walked out confused. Stories circulated about a radically different intended ending, unseen for decades. When finally restored in rare screenings, it revealed a shocking conclusion. Humanity's destiny was to merge with the ants into a new collective species. Gradually, the film gained devoted followers. Scientists admired its eerie plausibility. Film enthusiasts worshipped its strange beauty. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. This post-apocalyptic tale shocked everyone who saw it. Don Johnson plays Vic, surviving in a lawless wasteland with his telepathic dog, Blood. On the surface, it resembles cheap exploitation cinema. Underneath lies sharp social commentary. Vic scavenges through dangerous territory until discovering an underground society, the remnants of civilization living in sterile control, bound by rigid rules. It's a twisted mirror of the chaos above and a dark satire of conformity. Feminist groups protested its depiction of women. Critics debated whether it was genuine satire or something more troubling. Studios distanced themselves. Even Harlan Ellison, whose story inspired the film, expressed complicated feelings about the adaptation. Director L.Q. Jones faced severe budget constraints, shooting desert sequences on barren California land and building dystopian technology from scrap materials. Despite the controversy, it won the 1975 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation and grew into a cult favorite. Critics eventually praised its boldness, noting how it anticipated future stories about scarcity, control, and underground survival. Rollerball, 1975. Norman Jewison's brutal vision blended sports, violence, and dystopia into something audiences still argue about. The future has arrived. Corporations rule everything. Nations have dissolved. Personal freedom is an illusion. Society distracts the masses with rollerball, part roller derby, part gladiatorial combat. James Caan plays Jonathan E., the sport's greatest star, who discovers the game isn't entertainment. It's designed to prove individual effort is meaningless. When he refuses retirement, the system decides he must be eliminated. The controversy was enormous. Violence in 1970s cinema was escalating, and critics accused Rollerball of glorifying brutality. Jewison argued the opposite. The film condemned spectacle as oppression. Some countries cut entire sequences. West Germany briefly banned it completely. Production was chaotic. Actors performed dangerous stunts themselves, causing injuries. Caan trained with professional skaters for weeks. Fights during filming sometimes became genuine brawls. Executives wanted more action. Jewison fought to preserve political meaning. Young audiences cheered the violence. Critics debated its message. But its vision of corporations controlling not just economies, but human lives feels startlingly accurate today. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. Nicholas Roeg's film starring David Bowie promised stardom and spectacle. It delivered something far stranger, a surreal meditation on alienation, addiction, and exploitation. Bowie plays Thomas Jerome Newton, an alien who arrives on Earth seeking water for his dying planet. Using advanced technology, he builds a corporate empire. But success brings corruption. Government forces and human weakness eventually destroy his mission, leaving him stranded, broken, unable to return home. The fractured editing, graphic imagery, and dreamlike tone alienated mainstream viewers. Religious groups objected to its fallen angel imagery. Studio executives demanded cuts. By theatrical release, the film had been heavily edited, leaving audiences confused. Behind the scenes, Bowie, struggling with substance abuse, blurred boundaries between himself and his character. Crew members reportedly felt he wasn't acting. He was simply being Newton. Logan's Run, 1976. This MGM production seemed destined for blockbuster status. Futuristic world, dazzling sets, attractive young cast led by Michael York and Jenny Agutter. It performed well, and even won an Academy Award for visual effects. But its legacy faded quickly. The premise was chilling. In a domed city, citizens enjoy hedonistic lives until their 30th birthday, when they're executed in a ritual called carousel. Logan is a Sandman, an enforcer who begins questioning the lies. He escapes with Jessica, searching for a rumored sanctuary. Critics saw it as criticism of consumerism and youth obsession, predicting a society that discards the old. Religious groups condemned the carousel ritual. Behind the scenes, MGM executives clashed with director Michael Anderson, cutting sequences exploring darker psychological territory. Audiences loved the visuals, glowing crystals embedded in palms, the vast domed city. But critics complained about weak dialogue. Star Wars arrived the following year and overshadowed everything. Decades later, reassessment began. Science fiction fans recognized it as precursor to The Hunger Games and Divergent. Its vision of disposable youth feels disturbingly relevant now. Capricorn One, 1977. Imagine suggesting NASA faked a space mission during the post-Apollo era. That was scandalous, and exactly what director Peter Hyams did. The first manned Mars mission is about to launch, but moments before liftoff, astronauts are removed from the capsule. Officials reveal the terrifying truth. The mission is fake. Budget problems and technical failures mean the rocket will launch empty while the crew stages a Mars landing in a secret studio. When someone tries to expose the deception, the government turns to murder. NASA publicly condemned the film, fearing it would fuel conspiracy theories about the moon landings. Some theaters faced protests. The studio leaned into controversy, marketing it as the film they don't want you to see. James Brolin, Sam Waterston, and O.J. Simpson played the astronauts. Elliot Gould was the reporter uncovering the cover-up. Rumors spread about scenes cut under NASA pressure. Critics were divided. Some dismissed it as paranoia. Others praised its clever thriller construction. Conspiracy theorists later embraced it as evidence, twisting fiction into supposed proof. Today, it feels eerily modern, a warning about how easily trust crumbles when institutions lie. These 15 films share something important. They asked questions mainstream audiences weren't ready to hear. About technology controlling us, about governments lying to us, about humanity destroying itself, about what happens when we build things smarter than ourselves, or when we consume without conscience, or when we surrender freedom for comfort. The 1970s produced these warnings. We didn't listen. Now, decades later, their prophecies surround us. Perhaps it's finally time to pay attention.